and left us with the only known knowledge of these devices. Who knows, these could be even older and explain how many other cities were taken over behind the scenes. But in his very descriptive explanation of the machine, Matthews explained that these machines had been deployed all over London, secretly, in cellars. The heirloom was enormous. It stood 7 meters tall, and it was surrounded by barrels that fed noxious gases through oiled leathered pipes into the main body of the machine. The heirloom used magnetically charged air particles that could be directed towards its victim in order to induce the effect of mesmerism. Of course, we don't take mesmerism seriously today in modern science. However, this was not the case during this time period, and obviously there was an advanced machine capable of inducing these effects, so who's to say that these people can't do the same with their minds? But regardless, the machine needed to be operated by a certain amount of members who each had their own name and duty, as described by Matthews. The main body of the machine had a number of keys, levers, and brass retorts. These were used to modulate the flow of magnetically charged air that was emitted from the machine. Skillfully combined sequences of the various levers and keys could produce different types of air current, which could be directed towards the victim to assault them with a whole arsenal of psychological and physiological effects. Essentially, this was some type of instrument, and an art at that, as someone would basically play it as a piano and magnetically charge the air current with the intention of directing it towards the victim to assault them. One of these effects were called kiting, where an idea is forced into the thoughts of the victim, which undulates in the intellect for hours together, and how much soever the person assailed may wish to direct his mind to other subjects, he finds himself unable to do so. Similarly, thought-making. This gang could literally suck the thoughts out of a victim out of their head and replace it with any subject they choose. They had an effect called lobster cracking, in which the external pressure of the magnetic atmosphere surrounding the person assailed was increased so as to stagnate his circulation and produce instant death. They also interestingly talk about nutmeg, which is also known to give a psychedelic reaction to those who are allergic. They must have known that it could be used as a suggestogen. There are even depictions of the number of controls this machine had, multiple parameters for a variety of different settings. Now think about it, if this was just a delusion, then how is it possible to have such a detailed description of this device? There's a reason that this machine is not commonly known, and it's because these devices have been used on populations throughout history in order to cause amnesia, control popular narratives, and to take over societies. If they use this politically, who's to say they don't use this in other areas? What if this explains the Industrial Revolution and having all this cheap labor where you had these people working in bad conditions and yet they still stayed? The story is that they were poor and they had to. But what if there was some type of device in the cellars of these old mills that induced specific thoughts like being a hard worker because you have to? Now, there is another part of this that we'll cover briefly. Basically, when you look up influencing machine, what you have is all these educated mainstream scholars concluding that the heirloom and other mind control devices are just visions of schizophrenics. But not just that there's even something more profound to get from all this, that the influencing machine is some deep subconscious archetypal trope. Now, I'm not saying that this can't happen to someone with schizophrenia, but I am very suspicious of this public opinion and that these are all simply hallucinations of madmen. First off, isn't it convenient that the first schizophrenia patient ever just so happens to have the most detailed engravings of this machine, and no one at this time had been discussing any technologies like this in public literature, so there was no way he just imagined this out of nowhere. They literally built a working replica of the machine. It wasn't just a delusion, this was influenced by some type of event, and this wasn't just with James Matthews. There have been several counts of artists depicting these types of devices, but they're just labeled as insane. Or they just try to decode this as some deep Jungian philosophical symbolism when really, there may be multiple things going on. Spiritual forces that influence these peoples, and/or physical devices that actually do exist and influence the thoughts of their victims. There are actually quite a few depictions of these, and of course, it's not to say that every one of these is real, but this idea of a mind control device is obviously prevalent in our psyches, and sure, you can take the psychiatrist approach and just say it's an aspect of our deep subconscious or whatever, and I'm sure that does play a part, but it's not the meat of the subject. All the scholarly work on the subject tends to take this viewpoint. However, as many of you are thinking, these types of devices have existed for who knows how long, but they're not just fantasy, and they've been around far longer than just the heirloom. You would most likely think there would be an attempt to develop a mesmerism device and/or mind control device in the 18th century because hypnotism was believed to exist. That being the case, you would think that powerful people would look into creating a mind control device with the advancement of technology and electricity during the 18th century. Even in ancient societies, psychedelics and suggestogens have been used as means of controlling one's mind. What resulted in the 18th century was a fairly simple machine to construct that was advanced to operate and would go to work behind the scenes, influencing public suggestion and controlling the minds of anyone who would resist the establishment. This device would also allow for creating amnesia in a new population.
Let no flower of the spring pass by us. Let us crown ourselves with rosebuds before they be withered. Let none of us go without his part in our voluptuousness. Let us leave tokens of our joyfulness in every place, for this is our portion, and our lot is this. Let us oppress the poor righteous man, and let us not spare the widow, nor reverence the ancient gray hairs of the aged. Let our strength be the law of justice, for that which is feeble is found to be nothing worth. Therefore, let us lie in wait for the righteous, because he is not for our turn, and he is clean contrary to our doings. He upbraideth us with our offending the law, and objecteth to our infamy the transgressings of our education. He professeth to have the knowledge of God, and he calleth himself the child of the Lord. He was made to reprove our thoughts. He is grievous unto us, even to behold, for his life is not like other men's. His ways are of another fashion. We are esteemed of him as counterfeits. He abstaineth from our ways as from filthiness. He pronounceth the end of the just to be blessed, and maketh his boast that God is his Father. Let us see if his words be true, and let us prove what shall happen in the end of him. For if the just man be the Son of God, he will help him, and deliver him from the hand of his enemies. Let us examine him with despitefulness and torture, that we may know his meekness, and prove his patience. Let us condemn him with a shameful death, for by his own saying he shall be respected. Such things did they imagine, and were deceived, for their own wickedness hath blinded them. As for the mysteries of God, they knew them not, neither hoped they for the wages of righteousness, nor discerned a reward for blameless souls. For God created man to be immortal, and made him to be an image of his own eternity. Nevertheless, through envy of the devil came death into the world, and they that do hold of his side do find it. But the souls of the righteous are in the hand of God, and there shall no torment touch them. In the sight of the unwise they seem to die, and their departure is taken for misery, and their going from us to be utter destruction. But they are in peace. For though they be punished in the sight of men, yet is their hope full of immortality. And having been a little chastised, they shall be greatly rewarded. For God proved them, and found them worthy for himself. As gold in the furnace hath he tried them, and received them as a burnt offering. And in the time of their visitation they shall shine, and run to and fro like sparks among the stubble. They shall judge the nations, and have dominion over the people, and their Lord shall reign forever. They that put their trust in him shall understand the truth, and such as be faithful in love shall abide with him. For grace and mercy is to his saints, and he hath care for his elect. But the ungodly shall be punished according to their own imaginations, which have neglected the righteous, and forsaken the Lord. For whoso despiseth wisdom and nurture, he is miserable, and their hope is vain. Their labors unfruitful, and their works unprofitable. Their wives are foolish, and their children wicked. Their offspring is cursed. Wherefore blessed is the barren that is undefiled, which hath not known the sinful bed. She shall have fruit in the visitation of souls. And blessed is the eunuch, which with his hands hath wrought no iniquity, nor imagined wicked things against God. For unto him shall be given the special gift of faith, and an inheritance in the temple of the Lord, more acceptable to his mind. For glorious is the fruit of good labors, and the root of wisdom shall never fade away. As for the children of adulterers, they shall not come to their perfection, and the seed of an unrighteous bed shall be rooted out. For though they live long, yet shall they be nothing regarded, and their last age shall be without honor. Or if they die quickly, they have no hope, neither comfort in the day of trial. For horrible is the end of the unrighteous generation. Better it is to have no children, and to have virtue, for the memorial thereof is immortal, because it is known with God and with men. When it is present, men take example at it, and when it is gone, they desire it. It weareth a crown, and triumpheth forever. having gotten the victory, striving for undefiled rewards.